Today I'm going to go over a couple of graphs we've put together with the data that came from FSA regarding the 2014 crop year and the payments that were made on the Agricultural Risk Coverage, or ARC, county program. Remember, across the state, producers had a choice, so I'm going to be showing you some numbers that you say, hey, my neighbors maybe they got a lot of money. Just remember, they may have picked the other program, the price loss coverage for that crop, and they may or may not have gotten anything. So these are just kind of informative to see how the program paid out across the state. The first one I think I've shown you before is the corn payments for counties where it wasn't the yields were not specified to be broken out dry land and irrigated. So we'll have a couple more two graphs for corn after this, one irrigated and one non-irrigated. So what we have is, with FSA, they use a rule of something like 25% of the land in the county has to be irrigated and 25% has to be non-irrigated. So for those, there's a few counties across the state where that hits. Otherwise, you're going to have an all yield or a blended yield, which is this graph right here. As we said, some of the payments on corn get up pretty good. The way they interpret this graph, the tan areas are the ones where there's a differentiated yield, irrigated and non-irrigated counties. So don't pay any attention to them on this particular graph. There'll be a graph specifically for those counties following. No data available. The gray, that means that no data was provided by FSA. The white means that the calculated payment was zero. Then the different shadings of blue, with the darker blue with the higher payments, kind of tell you where the higher payments were made across the state. So again, most of your panhandle counties, they would have been a little bit higher than across the rest of the state. When you look at irrigated corn, again, the tan means that the relevant data was already on a different map, and for kind of the south central Texas area around Medina County, they actually have irrigated corn broken out yields separate and non-irrigated yields. And again, those payments on ARC County would have ranged around the $50 to $75 range for most of those counties. When you look at it on the non-irrigated corn across the state, again, those counties, they look like they're going to be less than $25. Some of them were around $25. So that's kind of how it looks for corn. For grain sorghum, again, what we have is a number of counties that would have, those kind of tan counties, those are counties where they are split, irrigated, non-irrigated counties. So don't pay any attention to them on this graph. Those particular counties you're going to read off a different graph. But it looks like the payments for grain sorghum kind of range anywhere between around $10 to, some of them got up as high as around $40, a little bit less, maybe around $30, $35. But again, if those counties where these payments were triggered, this is going to be help offset some of the low prices we've been dealing with. Irrigated grain sorghum, primarily up in the Panhandle and in the lower valley. Again, the payments with irrigated yields are going to be a little higher, so the payments were just slightly higher. Non-irrigated grain sorghum is going to be somewhere around between $10 and $20 when they're made. Looking at wheat, the payments across the state look like, for the most part, they're going to be in the $10 to $15 range, even less in some parts of the state. Although there is one that was significantly higher over closer to East Texas, as you can see on the map. Irrigated wheat, primarily again in the Panhandle and the Valley. Those yields are a little bit higher, so the payments would be a little bit higher with those. And the same thing with non-irrigated wheat. Those payments are going to be about half what the irrigated wheat would be. Same price, it uses the same price, just uses a different yield, and they end up being a little bit less. So what do you make of all this stuff? It's kind of interesting to see how the payments varied across the state. Remember, as we've talked about, a number of times on these videos, the ARC program uses a county yield, and that county yield is going to come from FSA. And if you have a situation where one county, your neighbor county, got a bigger payment than you did, you feel like the same weather. It's just the way these things work. Where you're going to some years just kind of wait your time. Some years it's going to work out where maybe that you got a lower payment than your neighbor did, and then across the county line, and then maybe the next year you'll get a higher payment. So you just kind of have to wait and see with this program. Again, it is a revenue-based program, so we both PLC and ARC use the same price, and for irrigated, non-irrigated, use the same price. So the big difference on ARC is the yields. Until next time, thank you.